Hello, my friends. So in this lesson, your children are going to be working on comparing four-digit numbers. Now, before we dive into the content of this lesson, let's talk about these symbols that they're going to use in this lesson. Now, these symbols are so important, and sometimes they give students trouble. Like even back when I was teaching in the high school grade, students would still sometimes have trouble with these symbols. We'll talk a little bit about why I think that is the case and how we can help avoid that. So first of all, when we're just reading them, this one is the less than symbol. The little trick I used to have is we can think of it as an L that's kind of squished down. This one is the greater than symbol. Not really sure of a trick of how to read that other than it doesn't look like an L. Of course, we have equal to and not equal to. Now, for this purpose at this grade level, we're calling these comparison symbols that helps us to compare two things. Later, we'll call less than, greater than, and not equal to. They'll call those inequality symbols. Now, when they're reading these, like for example, this would read 3 is less than 5. I think that sometimes the reason this gives students a little bit of difficulty is because this is the less than symbol, and I read it left to right just like I'm reading a book. But I can also look at this and see this as 5 is greater than 3. So I can also see how that could be greater than as well. So it's just important, I think, to practice reading these. Again, when we read it left to right. So in this case, 5 is greater than 3. So as we're reading it, that one that looks like the squished L, we always call that the less than. The one that doesn't, that one's the greater than. Now, when they're placing things, I always go back to what my third grade teacher told me about long time ago. She always says, and I never forgot it, the alligator opens its mouth to the bigger one, or the Pac-Man, if students think about Pac-Man. Now we also have 5 this is another way we could write this. 5 is not equal to 3. That's also a true statement, and it's another way to show those two are not equal. And then, of course, we have our equality statement with an equal sign. 5 is equal to 5. All right, so now just again, keeping that in mind, those are some things to practice on. When I see this sign, I know it's less than. When I see this sign, that reads greater than. All right, so they'll have a open up this lesson in the student practice book. You'll see there's a question similar to this one. Decided to throw my grandson's names in there. Rainer has 1,235 baseball cards. He does not, but we'll pretend for this. Rhett has 1,312. Who has more baseball cards? Okay, now there are two ways that we can compare numbers that students will work on in this lesson. One way is using a number line. That's not likely the way that you learned how to compare numbers. You're more likely learned how to compare using place value. Now, number lines are so important for students to work with, okay, because they can compare numbers on a number line because the one that is farther to the right is the larger number. Now, while it may seem a little bit easier to use place value, please spend some time working on number lines because this is going to be so important for students to have this strong foundational understanding of a number line and how numbers get larger as they move to the right, they get smaller as they move to the left. That is going to be so helpful for when they start tackling integers later on in middle school grades. So there is a reason. That is one of the reasons we're using number lines for comparing numbers, is to help instill that foundation. Numbers to the right are larger. Okay, so if they're using a number line, they would place both the numbers on the number line. Here's another thing that I've seen students struggle with is just the spatial sense of where do I put this number? Like 1,235. Well, 1,250 would be right in the middle. So I'd put it maybe a little bit to the left of the middle. Of course, it's not going to be exact, but it wouldn't make sense to put it all the way over here. So those are some things you can work on that will truly help students with their work with number lines. 1,312. So we would put that, we know 1,312 would be just a little bit past 1,300. So we can see the one further to the right is the 1,312. Okay, another way is to use place value. This is how I learned it, probably how you learned it. We always start by comparing the largest place value. So sometimes students may automatically look at the ones and go, well, 5 is greater than 2. So this number is greater. But that's the ones place. We got to start with those biggest place values. So when we look at the thousands place, they both have a 1. So then we move over to the hundreds. And we see that 3 is greater than 2. 300 is more than 200. So both the number line and using place value helps us see the greater number is 1,312. All right, now here's what we're talking about with those students struggling, because which one is greater? They may automatically be thinking greater and just want to just put the greater than symbol right here. Okay, but remember, stop and ask the students, which one is bigger? 1,312. We've discovered that. All right, the alligator, the Pac-Man, is going to open its mouth to the bigger one. So just like this. So 1,000, we would read this as 1,235 is less than 1,312. Please practice with your students reading the statement once you put that symbol down. Okay, so they'll have in their work today, they'll have a couple where they're asking them to use the number line. So again, please practice, help them with that spatial reasoning with a number line, like 4,530. Well, I've got 4,000, I've got 5,000, 4,500 is right in the middle. So we would put that about in the middle. That will be so helpful if you can work with your students on that. So we would put 4,530 about there. Of course, 3,000 is on the number line right here. So the one that's further to the right is the 4,530. Alligator opens its mouth to the bigger one. 4,530 is greater than 3,000. This one, 3,501. Okay, well, we've got 3,500. 3,550. So 3,501. That's just one number past 3,500. So it's going to be super close here. 3,501. 3,624. Well, we know we've got 3,600. These are the discussions to have with your students. 3,600, 3,650. So right in the middle is going to be 3,625. This is 24. It's going to be pretty close to the middle. So right here. So we can see 3,624 is the larger one. Alligator opens that mouth to the larger one. They'll have a few problems where they practice with, are they equal or not equal? Compare the place values. Every one of them is the same, so they're equal. Compare the place values. 5 in the thousands, 6 in the hundreds. Oops, we got a 3 in the 10 and a 5 in the 10. So those are not equal. This is just giving them some practice with using the not equal to sign. Again, we could also use in here, we would have less than if we were comparing those. Okay, on the last few, I've got some sample problems. Now, one thing, they'll have these in the book. How can you compare the numbers? Students get to pick their choice. Do they want to use place value? Do they not want to use number line? Now, I've included in the overview that I have here, a sheet where it's got a place value chart and a number line. I honestly think it would be such great practice for your students for these problems on their homework to put the two numbers into the place value chart. 2,512, 2,518. Let me pause and say your student may use place value, have it, don't need to really use the place value charts. That's fine. But if your student's struggling a little bit with it, think about using these. Okay, so we look, same in the thousands, same in the hundreds, same in the tens, but the ones, 8 is greater than 2. So we know that the larger number is 2,518. So the alligator is going to open its mouth to the larger one. All right, so now we would read this, practice reading it. 2,512 is less than 2,518. Now I have a number line. Even if your students, they've got it, they know place value. They can easily say which one is greater. Still have them practice putting it on a number line, because I'm promising you that is going to provide so much foundation and support for later math grades. Okay, because now we're really thinking about that spatial reasoning, because I've got 2,512, 2,518. The number line is not numbered. So what could we do here? Well, we can number it. We can say, well, we just go from 2,512 to 2,518. So we might do 2,510, 2,520. We may even look, then we're going to be squeezing them both in between here. There's no right or wrong answer here. So maybe we say, all right, well, I'm going to do it by twos. I'm going to do 2,510, 2,512, 2,514, 2,516, 2,518. So then we could put them on the number line, and it also shows that 2,518 farther to the right. Okay, I know it's getting to a long video, my apologies, but look at this one. This is just another good example here where the place value charts help, because we got 4,116 and 982. All right, no thousands here. So we definitely know the 4,000 number is greater. Again, if I practice with a number line, I've got to have 982, 4,000. Would it make sense to put 900, 950, 1,000? No. At this point, I would probably just do, I would probably start with 0, and then I might do 1,000, 2,000, 3,000, 4,000. And so then I would know the 4,116 goes right after the 4,000, and then 982 right before the 1,000. That will be such good practice for your students, placing them on the number line, and also verifying their answer that the one to the right is the larger number. All right. I hope that you all enjoy this lesson. I'll see you in another one.